Well, lone wolf terrorist attacks are something in free societies like the United States or Great Britain, or something you actually see infrequently. The data actually shows that the freest societies actually have the least terrorism, in part because that's the least thing there are to complain about. But periodically throughout history, we've seen cases of lone wolf terrorism. So in some respects, it's nothing new. Well, and this is a trend that we have seen recently is self-radicalization. A lot of it is done using tools on the internet, downloading iPod speeches, going to chat sites, going to websites online. So there is a notion if people want to get self-radicalized, they can do that even without, in a sense, of supporting community. Well, I think you have to remember that lone wolf terrorists are a tiny percentage of any group other than other terrorists. They're not economically consistent. We've seen lone wolves who have been middle income, high income, low income. We've seen people who were born in the countries and raised there. We've seen diaspora come over and become radicalized. We're really dealing with such small numbers. It's very, very difficult. I mean, you can look at kind of common characteristics and say all these people have these common characteristics. The problem is you could look at hundreds and hundreds of thousands of other people that all have exactly the same characteristics. The only difference is they're not terrorists. Well, I think we have seen both. We've seen individuals who are completely self-radicalized. We've seen individuals like for example, we had the Times Square bomber who actually was, in a sense, linked to an organization, although many of the activities that he did were by himself. And we've seen that with several attacks attempted recently by Hezbollah in Europe. But we've also seen cases where people are actually formally or informally linked to an organization. So we're a bit all over the map, and we've had at least 54 terrorist, Islamist-related terrorist incidents aimed at the United States since 9/11 that have been thwarted. And when you look at them, it's really a potpourri. And these are really, if you think 54 incidents over a span of a decade in a country the size of a continent with 300 million plus people, it's very, very hard to argue that there are real trends there that you can identify. Very rarely do you have a lone wolf be so extraordinarily isolated and quiet that they literally haven't sent a signal to somebody that law enforcement might not have legitimately picked up on without violating people's privacies or liberties. So I think the notion that we need to do something special or additional is to deal with a lone wolf threat is not accurate. I think normally if law enforcement just does its job and shares information, a lot of these attacks you could potentially thwart, and in the United States, indeed, we have. But we don't. You don't prevent every act of violence and criminality and terrorism. That's just the reality of it. So the notion that somehow you have to be perfect in order to be doing things appropriately and doing due diligence, I don't think is a fair standard.